Welcome to Health News and Views, a podcast dedicated to bringing some clarity to the health disparities in the Black and Brown communities. If you believe there's a connection between food, sickness, and health, then you're in the right place. Let's begin the process of unraveling the truth. And now your host, Lynn Pete.
Greetings and welcome to Health News and Views, Food, the Final Frontier. Thank you for coming back for yet another episode. And in this episode, we will expound on episode 60, part 1, where the question is asked, are we the lab rats for the food industry? Okay, the title's a bit ambiguous, and I don't think the food industry is really trying to experiment with our food, nor are we really lab rats, but I don't think that at all. But what I do think is that given the choice between profit over health precautions, the food industry for sure has erred on the side of profit. But before I continue, allow me to make this disclaimer. The information provided in this podcast or any of our published documents is for informational purposes only. Food, the Final Frontier, and Health News and Views does not attempt to treat, diagnose, or cure any condition. Always consult with your physician before making any significant diet, lifestyle, or prescription drug changes. And if you have any questions or suggestions, comments, please send those to eatingtostaywell.com. That's all one word, eatingtostaywell@gmail.com. Well, it has always been the intention of Health News and Views, Food, the Final Frontier, to seek answers to why questions regarding health and sickness, leading to investigative research of diet and diseases, causes, and cures. And we believe that documentation beats conversation every time. And at the end of the day, we still happen to see millions being spent on prescription drugs, research and development, and yet heart disease is still the number one cause of death in the United States. And yet diet and food never seem to be mentioned. Well, here's an Ayurvedic proverb. When the diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When the diet is correct, medicine is of no need. And if you're a frequent listener, you may know that this proverb is the hallmark of our podcast. And the statistics, primarily, we're looking at Black and Brown communities, which seem to hold the first and second spots as far as chronic diseases. And the health markers continue to be grim. I want to share with you just a few of those health markers that have come to my attention. There's a higher maternal mortality rate for Black women in the United States. The numbers for diabetes, obesity, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and heart disease are also higher than any other ethnic group. Hypertension among African American adults is at 55%, according to the World Health Organization. Even they say that's a lot. If you happen to be 65 years or older, you're probably taking anywhere from 6 to 11 prescription drugs. 40% of our children have at least one chronic disease. And yes, asthma is considered a chronic disease. 72% of the U.S. dietary calories are now coming from ultra-processed foods. So that's a lot. Not one of these diseases that I just mentioned, not diabetes, not stroke, not heart attack, none of these diseases are contagious. And there is no prescription cure for any of them. And their only thing that a prescription can actually do is to help control the disease, but it cannot cure it. So says the National Institutes of Health. Well, I would like to share with you some quotes from leading doctors in the field of health and nutrition that I ascribe to the studies that I have reviewed online and in books that they have produced. According to Chris Van Tulleken, an infectious disease physician in his mid-40s, states that a poor diet is now the leading cause of death on the planet Earth for human beings. He said that the more processed foods you eat, the higher your risk of earlier death due to cancer, stroke, diabetes, and heart attacks. Inflammatory diseases like Crohn's disease, and mental health issues or diseases like anxiety and depression have gotten even worse. And at the top of the list of his list is also dementia, something else to consider. And by the way, dementia can start as early as 30 years old. He's also identified 5 ways to buy ultra-processed foods, and I will be presenting that in the next podcast after this one. Dr. Mark Hyman of the Cleveland Clinic said that the reason why so many Black and Latino patients died during COVID was because they had at least one chronic disease and a compromised immunity. He went on to say that the U.S. is only 4% of the world's population, yet we had 16% of the COVID deaths. A study from Tufts University reported that 63% of those patients who were hospitalized with COVID, their deaths were caused by food-related chronic conditions. Dr. Robert Lustig, author of the book Metabolical, stated that COVID did not distinguish who it infects. There was no distinction between who it infects. The distinction came. Dr. Robert Lustig, author of the book Metabolical, stated that COVID did not distinguish who it infected, but it did distinguish who it killed. And other than the elderly, those people who died from COVID happened to be Black, they were obese, and they had at least one pre-existing condition. Okay, family, we must turn the ship around. These doctors know what's going on and who is at risk. As we embark on the new year, taking stock in our health should be at the top of the list. As a dear friend says, without your health, not much else matters. And this message is for all who have ears to hear and a mouth to pass on the information. There are only 10 companies that control almost every large food and beverage brand in the world. Food industry is not interested in whether their product has an adverse effect on your health. Most of what we are buying is made from wheat, soy, and corn. It's crushed, mashed, and reformed to look like food, but it's not food. Multicolored, sugar-laden, ultra-processed cereal is not food. Salty, artificially colored and flavored snacks washed down with a colorful drink is not food. Fiber is removed from processed and ultra-processed food because it accelerates the decomposing of the product. So what did they do? They took out the fiber and they replaced it with extra sugar, salt, and fat. Does that affect the human body in any way, shape, or form? Some would say not so much. But wait, nutrition. NIH states that nutrition plays an essential role in regulating optimal immune response by providing adequate nutrients in sufficient concentrations to the immune cells in such a manner that the immune system can initiate effective responses against the pathogens. Well, basically what they said was there will come a time when the pathogens will come calling, and it may come in the form of a virus, bacteria, or fungus. The attack will be minimal if the body has stored up munitions, and that would be essential vitamins and nutrients to fight off the invaders. Everything we do, say, or eat has consequences. Every piece of food that enters the body will become you. The body extracts the nutrients to turn them into building new cells, bones, muscles, and neurons. So we're either building up or destroying things like cancer cells through food. Interestingly, the U.S. has spent $6 billion in cancer research to find the cause of cancer. Okay, but they only spent $100 million in nutrition, which is probably where the $6 billion should have been spent. Dr. Mark Hyman spoke of giving people in poor health money to buy food and less money to buy prescriptions. However, I know that correlation is not causation, but I'm just making a point. We must begin to question our choices and selections. Eating to live will become far more important later in life than living to eat. It will take some planning, but I know we can do it, and I'm looking forward to sharing even more information in the next 2 episodes to tell you how we can do that. Stay tuned for more Health News and Views, Food, the Final Frontier, so I can explain to you in the next episode what on earth do we need: stabilizers, thickeners, vegetable gums, mineral salts, foaming agents, and emulsifiers in our food. What we must suffer: 2 things in life: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. That comes from Jim Rohn. Thanks, Jim Rohn. Make it a powerful day. Do come back. There's so much more to talk about. Hit me up at eatingtostaywell@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions, comments, or you'd like to be a part of the podcast, make it a great day. Do come back.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Health News and Views. Join us again next time as we continue to explore the correlation between food, sickness, and health. If you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review for Lynn. She would love to hear your comments. Thanks again for listening, and remember, food is the final frontier.